right, hello everyone. Eric Marks here again with findingmiddleearth.com. And my face is probably making some weird expressions right now because it's so cold. I'm kind of losing control of my face. I didn't bring a big enough jacket. I didn't think it was going to be this cold today. It wasn't supposed to be this cold, but I'm here doing the second part of the Panorama video. I have my Nikon D850, my Acratech leveling base and panoramic head here, and of course the nodal slide. Now, before I left to come and get this shot on location, I found out what the nodal point of my lens is back at my house, nice and warm in my long hallway at my house. So I had a light stand about 2 or 3 feet away from my camera, and then a light stand a little bit further away, and I made sure the nodal point was perfect on there and did not move in relationship to each other. It's so windy out here. Hope you guys can hear me okay. But this is another good stability test for the Acratech gear and for this new tripod I'm actually testing out. So we'll talk more about that in another video. But I had to put this big dead cat thing on my microphone. I hope it's working. Anyway, before I lose complete feeling of my hands, so there's this beautiful mountain range in the back. I'm actually at a local church here that's not too far from my house. It's about 25 minutes or so. And I passed this church one day on the way to a waterfall. And I just thought that it had like an absolutely beautiful view. So I knew I had to come back. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be better light, but it's kind of gray and dreary today. So because of that, I'm still here trying to get the video out of it, because at least, you know, the point of this video is more so to give you guys an example of using the panoramic gear in the field versus just getting me a cool photograph. So I'm hoping if a miracle happens, maybe a little beam of sunlight will pop out of the clouds and spray some light on the mountain range in the back. But for now, what I've done is I've gotten my D850 on the nodal slide here. I've already leveled my base here. So remember, this part of the tripod here is the leveling base. So if you loosen that, loosen that up here, you just use the bubble level on the leveling base to get that perfect. So that's locked down. Now I know, regardless of what my tripod legs are doing down here, everything from here up is level, because my leveling base has now leveled out the head. So no matter what kind of panning I do now on my panoramic head, it's perfectly level. And I can see that in the camera, and I can see that here on the actual bubble level on the ball head. Sorry, I'm trying to block the wind here. It's getting really, really windy. There's a wind advisory right now. So I hope this video, or I hope the audio turns out. Okay, so let's go ahead and take some shots so that I can get out of this cold and get back in my car. I'm gonna pop on the live view, excuse me, on my camera here. What lens am I using? I'm using the Nikkor 105 macro lens. So it's the VR version. Of course, I have the VR turned off right now, but it's a razor sharp lens, and it's the perfect focal length for this shot right now. It's perfect to be able to get a nice sweep pan of this mountain range. And I'm feeling a little bit lucky because at least right over the mountains, it seems that there's going to be some texture in the clouds. So I can make this kind of a cool dramatic shot, or even make it a black and white. I'm not sure, but at least there is going to be some information there in the raw file for me to have a look at. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the autofocus point just on the mountains here. I'm going to pan all the way to the farthest point to the left that I want to start at. And I don't have to worry about my degree markers here so much, because I'm not doing a multi-row panorama on this. For this particular composition, it's going to be fine just doing a pan left to right. But if I was doing multi-row, I would use my degree markers so that every time I started back to the left and did another pan and tilt, I would know exactly what degree marker that I started at each time. So that way in Photoshop or Lightroom, it's super easy for the software to recognize the stitch, because they were all started and finished at the exact same point in the scene. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a shot here. So we're autofocused. Let me just confirm that everything's level. Yep, leveling base good. Okay, cool. And what's funny is, as I'm looking here, so it's funny, the tripod bubble level is completely uneven, but this leveling base is spot on. So that's what's so beautiful about this leveling base. I think, let's see. I think I might actually adjust this panning head, and I'm gonna tilt up just a little further. I'm gonna tilt this whole thing up and go a little bit further to the left. take that focus point down again and put it on the mountain. As far as camera here, I'm shooting at a 20th of a second, ISO 64 and f20. The reason I'm shooting f20 is because this is a macro lens, so I do want to make sure I get as much depth of field as I can out of that, because macro lenses typically do have very narrow depth of field, especially on a full frame camera. So what I think I'm going to do is just manually focus the lens. So I'm going to swap this into manual, let this kind of finish here. There we go, that looks about focused. So I'm just going to quickly do my left to right pans here. So we'll go shot number 1, and we'll pan it just a little bit more, and we'll go shot number 2. And again, because this is so far away, shot number 3. I don't have to autofocus. I know that the focus is going to be the same all the way out there in the distance. All right, pan a little bit more, do another shot, and we'll pan just a little bit more and do another shot, and we'll pan just a little bit more and another shot, a little bit more, and I'm just going to keep going for a little while so that I have a lot of real estate to work with back in the software. Okay, there's another one. I don't even know, what am I at, 6 or 7 shots out here now probably. Okay, one more shot. And I'm going to be cropping most of this foreground out anyway. Okay, we'll keep going a little bit. Man, it's windy out here. My ears are completely frozen off. I think they're probably going to fall off. Okay, I think that's enough shots. I probably did 10 or 11 shots. All right, so I did just a quick little recap here. So I did the leveling base. I tilted the head exactly where I wanted. I found my nodal point before I ever left my house, which is a good thing because I wouldn't have made it out here if I would have had to figure out the nodal point while I was in this, 30-degree weather. And I think I got some really nice shots in the bag. This is a 46 megapixel camera, so who knows? It's probably gonna be like a, 300 megapixel panorama or something, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. So let's go ahead and get out of the cold, go back to the office, grab a coffee, and we'll stitch these shots together and see what we have. All right, I'm home. I've had my cup of coffee. I sat by the fireplace for a few minutes. So let's go ahead and take a look at the photos. All right, so here are all the raw files. Now, before I went to make my cup of coffee, I came up here and imported the photos. And I immediately noticed that there were 15, if you select all these, there are 15 46 megapixel raw files from the D850 on all my stitch pano, from panning left to right. 15 images is what I took. So obviously I knew that merging that on camera and in the tutorial is not going to happen because it's going to take way too long. So it took about 12 or 13 minutes just to do the merge. So I went ahead and merged the photos. And if you want to take a look at them real quick, here's the stitch, or the pan that we did while we were in the field here. So there's image number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And the Acratech, I went ahead and inspected everything after it merged. You can see I went ahead and merged it here, right here. And after merging it, I inspected everything closely with the trees, the bushes there in the foreground, and the nodal rail really does work, because this time I did not have any kind of ghosting issues with anything, closer to my camera, like the foreground or the graves or anything like that. There's no ghosting. The nodal rail did a phenomenal job at keeping everything perfectly stitched. And the Acratech stuff in the field worked perfect, as expected. So if we do close-up views of some of this, it did a phenomenal job. Everything is nice and sharp. The bushes in the foreground are a little soft. Everything is super sharp in the back. That's just because I manually focused to the back, and I didn't really want everything to be super sharp in the foreground. There's just no need. So you can see even this house, if we do a 2-to-1 view, this house is still just insanely sharp, and everything is sharp all the way through. This was shot at, let's see, ISO 64 and f20 on the 105 macro lens. Now if I sift through this again, and you see up here in the information, this is a 25,000 pixel across DNG file here. So this is a little over 200 megapixels. So obviously post-processing this image on camera presented some troubles as well. Before I sat down here a couple minutes ago, I just tried to play around with the image a little bit, and every time I made an exposure adjustment or anything, it took about 10 seconds to 15 seconds to update the changes because it's such a large file. So I went ahead and exported this as a JPEG and went ahead and re-imported it over here. So here we go. So here's the JPEG file, as you can see down here. It's just the same image. I just had to make it a JPEG so that I could actually post-process it on camera. So obviously after I'm done processing the JPEG, I can just sync those settings over to the RAW file and I'll be fine. Then I'll actually get the data that I want out of the RAW file. So for the purposes of this tutorial, let's go ahead and process this JPEG here. So I'm going to go ahead and crop this image. I'm going to crop a good bit off the right side. We'll crop to this little mountain here. Let's crop up a little bit to get some of that graveyard out of there. Something like that. And we'll crop down on the sky just a bit. Something like that. Okay? So the graveyard over here to the bottom left, that's just super easy cloning. Clone stamping to get rid of that, so we might do that at the end. But as far as the processing, how would I process this if I were to post it online or my blog or something? Well, first I would tell you that I probably wouldn't post it because I don't really like the image that much. The strongest part of this image, I think, is the mountains and the sky. This image would be much better if this cute little white house right here was not obstructed by the trees and it was sitting like over here somewhere, right in the middle of the open valley. That would really just add to the composition. So I think that would make the image a little stronger. And obviously the lighting, the time of day. I know at sunrise this time of year, the sun rises right here in between these two little peaks. So if you could get the sun star peeking through there, that would make a pretty awesome image. I might go back and do that, but this is at a church that does have office hours, so I didn't want to bother anybody. I came at a good time where no one was there and I had the whole place to myself. So let's just go ahead and process this for what it is, which is a really just moody, cold, dreary, dramatic image. So I don't like the greens being as punchy as they are. So let's go ahead and just desaturate the whole image. Maybe 13% works. Let's take away some of the vibrance as well. The same amount, maybe not quite as much, maybe 7% or -7. Then let's go ahead and add some contrast. Okay, just a little bit. We'll leave the highlights just super simple, maybe -10, nothing too crazy. We'll lift the shadows. Okay, I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard, find the white point here to add some more contrast. So somewhere around, I'm just going to leave it around 55, and then we'll take the black point to about 20. Okay, and that just added some overall contrast there. We might bump the shadows a little more since we did that. Okay, and then I want to add some dehaze. Let's do the dehaze slider about 15% overall globally, which really brings out some nice texture in the clouds. But I want to continue doing that. Let's add some global clarity as well. And then let's pop on a grad filter here. So let's just drag this down like this. Okay, and we'll pull the bottom of this to kind of feather the edge a little bit more. And let's reset everything, and let's just add some minus exposure. Not a whole lot, but just enough to make a dramatic difference. Okay, something like that. We'll add a little bit more dehaze so we can work on the sky a little more. That might be too much. Okay, and then we'll add a little bit more clarity. Okay, and I'm not really worried about it adding too much noise. The clarity tool in Lightroom has been refined so much over the years that it typically doesn't punch out too much noise. If it does, we can do some noise reduction. It's no big deal. Let's go ahead and close that. I might continue to lower the greens a little bit more as far as the tonal values of those. So let's hop into the hue, saturation, luminance scale over here, which is the HSL. Let's target the greens. This is either going to fall under greens or yellows or both, so let's just see. If we take the green all the way down, there we go, so it is the greens. So let's continue desaturating those greens just a little bit. Same with the yellows. I think the greens look a little funny that they're that punchy in such a cold, dreary environment like this. Okay, obviously we'll add a little bit of sharpening. Maybe, let's go 60, and then we'll pop a mask on that. We'll do something like that. Okay, we'll pop in some noise reduction, about 15% there, just in case. Of course, we'll remove chromatic aberrations. I don't need to do profile corrections because I already did those on each of the raw files before I merged it to a panorama. So it's looking decent. Let's grab a local adjustment brush and let's do a dodge. And let's make the flow super low, like 15%. And we'll make the size a little smaller. And let's come up here to the navigator and zoom in a little bit. And I just want to dodge some of the green. So I don't want it to be super colorful, but I do want it to be a little brighter, just so it adds a little bit more drama into the scene here. Okay, I don't know if my computer's lagging or if I'm just not adding enough exposure here. Let's do that. There we go. I know the flow is really low, so it just takes a little bit to add that exposure. There we go. All right, my computer's still lagging just a little bit because even though this is a JPEG, it's still a 25,000 pixel across image. So my computer is not loving me for this right now. Okay, we'll just kind of dodge all this a little bit, make it look a little better. And the reason I'm doing this is just to draw some extra attention to this area. Again, I didn't want it very colorful, but I do want to draw some attention with the viewer's eye. And the way to do that, the way to control some of the eye flow in images is to control it with contrast. And you control contrast by brightening and darkening certain areas. So I've already darkened a lot of the image globally. So I'm just brightening portions of it up. Okay, we'll just do something like that. See how that looks. Go up here and press Fit. And I might add a little bit more exposure if I need to. Let's let this load again. There we go. I know I hear my computer's fans just starting to scream in the background. Okay, we'll even add a little bit of warm tone to that. Something like that. We'll add a little bit of clarity to that dodge that we just did there. Okay, we'll shrink the brush a little bit. We'll add a little bit more in here. Okay. All right. I'm decently happy with that. Again, this isn't some 5-star showstopper image, but that doesn't mean we can't take our time with it to see if it at least doesn't turn out okay. Okay, so let's close that dodge tool over here as soon as my computer catches up with me. And that's not bad. Let's maybe take the overall exposure down. Something like that, and then we can bring the shadows up. Okay, I think I made it too dark. Let's bring it back up just a little bit. We'll stretch those whites a little further. Keep some of those clouds kind of popping. There we go. That also kind of accentuates the dodging job that we did. And I think I'm going to go back into the dodge tool because I think I did a little bit too much of it. We'll click that tool and we'll lower the exposure a little bit there. I think I made it a little bit too punchy. Okay, we'll hit close, and I think something like that is pretty good. Obviously, I would take this into Photoshop here and remove the graves here, and I would just clone stamp some of the bushes up here into the graves, but there's no reason for you to see me do that. You guys all know how to clone stamp in Photoshop, so there you go. Got some texture back in the clouds, desaturated the image a bit, added some contrast. The clouds are decent. The mountains are always beautiful there, but I'm going to go back on an actual shooting day when I'm not doing a panorama tutorial, and I'll actually go back and see if I can get a decent image, and then I'll post it on Facebook and social media and see if I can show you guys this scene at its best when the light is nice, maybe at sunrise or something. So, okay, there you go. I hope you enjoyed watching the panorama tutorial. Again, if you missed part 1 where I talk about the panorama gear, the link will be in the description for that. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.